Hello, I'm David, your long curly-haired host, and welcome to Auspol Explained, your number one spot to learn about how the Australian political system works, except for maybe the ABC or The Guardian, who are my main competitors. Unfortunately, I don't have the budget to compete with their video production, but hey, speaking of budgets, today's episode is about the annual budget that the government releases. What is that? What does that mean? When will I get a haircut? Let's find out the answer to the first two of those questions. Basically, the budget is how the government plans to collect and spend money. There are a few parts to the budget. It's an assessment of the economy, the government's priorities for the coming year, how much money the government expects to collect, how the government plans to spend it, bills to authorise that spending, and any other legislation that is necessary to give effect to the government's financial plans. The government can't spend money unless it has passed a law to allow it to use that money. These are called appropriation bills. All the services the government provides, so healthcare, defence, welfare, infrastructure, education, paying public sector wages, and much more, all of that requires that spending to be authorised by Parliament. The budget is a combination of a financial report and also a policy statement because it provides information about the economy, but also what the government wants to spend money on and why. It's not just, "Dear Parliament, may I have $100 billion, please? Yours lovingly, Mr. Government." Money for specific programs and purposes is being withdrawn from the Consolidated Revenue Fund, which is what your taxes automatically go into. The budget shows what the government is prioritising, if it is making any cuts to spending, and what is getting a boost to funding. The federal budget is introduced by the Treasurer in the House of Representatives, usually in May of each year, but can be done outside of that. State and territory governments also have budgets introduced in their respective lower houses at various times, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm just focusing on the federal budget in this episode, but let's all remember that states and territories matter too, except of course New South Wales for obvious reasons. The introduction of the budget is called Budget Night. Budget Night is a time for the big nerds to get really excited and examine line items about government spending. It's like Christmas for journalists, if your idea of Christmas is being given copies of the budget to examine ahead of time, but then also being locked in a room without any internet access for several hours, so it can't be leaked at all before the Treasurer introduces it. A classic Christmas. Usually, but not always, the annual budget is presented on the second Tuesday in May. The Treasurer gives a speech at 7:30 p.m. and tables the budget papers. Tabling is this really cool thing where a document is placed on a table. In Parliament, it's very literal. Ta-da! It is now a public document. You can read it if you like. You can find it on the Parliament website. In Parliament, there are time limits on members on how long they can speak in most instances, but for the budget, the Treasurer is given technically unlimited time. So theoretically, the Treasurer could talk for like 7 hours if they could think of things to say, but in a more practical way, it's normally just half an hour. And then the journalists can be free. Then on Thursday, the Leader of the Opposition gives what's called the Leader of the Opposition's Budget Reply speech. All members get a chance to comment during the debate of a bill, so it doesn't need to be given a nickname, but in this case it has been given one, just for fun. The Leader of the Opposition then presents the opposition's policies and ideas of how money should be spent if only they were in government, so therefore the public can scrutinise and examine their options at the next election. The House of Representatives then debates the budget, normally for several weeks, so members of the government, opposition and crossbench can all have their say. Debate on a bill must be relevant to the specifics of that bill, but given that the budget is such a broad topic that covers every single area of responsibility of the government, debate can be basically about anything relating to public affairs, government policy, or administration. So, yay! Now let's talk about amendments. Usually any member can introduce a proposed amendment to any bill. The budget, on the other hand, is a bit different though. It has a few restrictions. It's actually also multiple bills, and some of the restrictions apply to one of them and not the other ones. I'll get into that in a moment. But Basically, the Constitution requires the Governor-General to send a message to the House of Representatives recommending an appropriation bill be introduced and its purpose. As the Governor-General acts on the advice of government ministers, this sounds like a formality, but actually creates this limitation where it's not possible for any member other than a government minister to introduce an appropriation bill, or make it cost more money, or change the purposes for the use of that money. And if a minister wants to amend the budget to increase its costs, then that requires a new message from the Governor-General to be sent. Basically, the government is the one who gets to introduce bills to withdraw and use government money. However, budgets can be amended by other members to cost less money or remove items from spending. The Senate also has an important job in examining the budget. Before a bill becomes law, the Senate must also pass it. But the Constitution says the Senate can't amend a bill appropriating money for the ordinary annual services of the government. This doesn't mean the Senate is powerless and just has to rubber stamp things because, as mentioned, there are multiple bills, one of which deals only with those ordinary annual services, so money for government departments and agencies so they can operate, including paying public servant wages. The other bills are about other things like funding for public works, acquisition of sites and buildings, or grants to the states, and so the Senate can amend those. Appropriation bills to do with ordinary annual services of the government can only be specifically about those services, so this prevents the House from just tacking on a bunch of other things and forcing the Senate to agree to things. So if there is a detail that the Senate could alter or amend, it is in a separate bill that allows the Senate to do that. There's also a third bill for the operation of Parliament, which is a separate thing to the running of government. The Senate also examines the budget in advance. However, the Senate can't debate bills until the House of Representatives passes them and sends them to it. But the budget is really big, and the Senate has lots of questions about government spending. So to get around this whole you can't debate the bill until it's passed rule, they don't debate the budget as a bill, they take notes about the details in the budget, and then examine those details. It's technically different, no copyright infringement intended. The Senate then has 8 committees called Senate estimates, which I promise is very important and not super boring. Please continue watching or listening. So, the Senate estimates then examine different aspects of the budget. One is about health and aged care and social services, and another one examines education and employment, etc. This allows the Senate to directly ask questions of public servants and ministers about the programs and services they're responsible for. Basically like, hey, you want to spend millions of dollars on this program? Why does it need that? What does it do? Is this an efficient use of public money? This way, the Senate can effectively gather information and scrutinize the decisions and spending of the government and the public sector to ensure that they are accountable to the Parliament. Estimates committees then present a report to the Senate with any concerns or recommendations it has. This all then becomes public knowledge. These questions and answers are all written down and video recorded, and you can read about the details of government decisions on spending on the Parliament website. Then, when the House passes the budget and sends it to the Senate has saved a lot of time having already asked a ton of detailed questions weeks in advance to all the various government departments about their actions. Ta-da! And then the Senate can efficiently pass the budget and allow the government to spend money on the services that it needs to spend money on. And there you have it. I hope that has been interesting. You've learned a little bit, and share with some people so they can learn as well. Comment down below what you would like to learn about next, and if you think that it would fit within your own personal budget, maybe you could consider supporting me on Patreon. The link is in the description. For only $1 per video, you can make me $1 per video richer. Sounds fair to me. See you next time.